hypothetically,
someone were to ask me,
how would you describe
Kevin
Durant?
Yeah.
Kevin Durant.
Here's what I would say.
First and foremost,
he moves like a dancer.
But he's a killer.
That man was born to end lives.
He's a vicious, cold-blooded predator! Not to mention,
He's huge with extremely long arms.
A master at his craft, you know. Someone that
Just keeps getting better and better.
For a basketball player, the label of black hole is typically one that you want to avoid. It's slapped on selfish players who are all take and no give. In astronomy, actual black holes are mysterious, and at their centers are bafflingly powerful regions of space that have gravitational fields unlike anything else in the universe. Places where density of matter become infinite and our laws to explain the physical universe break down. Science calls these points singularities. Spare the selfishness part, that sounds a lot like Kevin Durant, to me. Mysterious, confounding, and a gravitational pull unlike anything in the basketball universe. As it applies to uniqueness, he's a true singularity in the history of the sport. A point at which offensive capability seems to stretch towards the infinite and the rules of traditional defense break down. This sport has seen some jaw-dropping blends of skill set and body type. These are the breathtaking, boundary-pushing superheroes that the sport's history is built upon. Many of these players seem singular, at least at the time. We'd never seen anything like them before, and as a result, we were tempted to say,
We shall never see his like again.
But usually those players have a way of blazing the trail for people to follow their path. They reinvent the thinking for what's possible. At 6'9", Magic Johnson's rim pressure, court vision, and feel during his transition blitzes boggled the minds of hoops fans in the 70s and the 80s, but that set the table for modern players like LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Kevin Durant's implausible meld of unique frame and elite skill boggle the mind in a similar way. People love to say that KD is actually a 7-footer largely because his length creates that impression, but he was measured at the 2007 NBA Combine at 6'10" inches in shoes with a lean torso and an incredible wingspan that's just shy of 7'5". In today's NBA, that's a frame that's roughly comparable to players like Miles Turner, Anthony Davis, or Wendell Carter Jr. Reaching back, that's even in the ballpark of someone like Kevin Garnett. Durant did not break the mold by being a tall dude who can shoot it. Lots of players paved the way for him in that sense. That lineage reaches back nearly to the dawn of the NBA, and the following decades were littered with rangy dudes with range. Many people say that Dolph Schayes was the first. Jerry Lucas followed, that huge white guy for the Celtics with the bad back that nobody ever talks about. Detlef Schrempf, Clifford Robinson, Sam Perkins, several more, until Dirk Nowitzki came and blew the doors off of the traditional expectations for the position. Durant's case is especially fascinating because his physical gifts have enabled him to bridge two significant offensive archetypes. He took the effectiveness of the stretch big and supercharged that by successfully emulating the skill set of an elite scoring wing. At that size and at that level, self-created offense on the perimeter is rare but not unheard of. Guys like Dirk, Hedo Turkoglu, Peja Stojakovic, Rashard Lewis, Danny Granger, they were facing up and frequently creating their own shot off the bounce, but KD has been and continues to be something else entirely. He's much too quick and skilled with the ball for the bigs with the size to bug him, and much too big for perimeter players who might have a chance to stay in front of him. Role and body type evolution in the sport enabled this kind of skill and size mishmash to happen, but guided skill development was important.
I was groomed to play basketball. Like, I had a Mr. Miyagi. Everybody knew at a young age, this was what I wanted to do.
Mr. Miyagi, in this instance, was a man named Taurus Brown, a legendary local coach in Prince George's County, Maryland, or PG County, as they call it, who luckily recognized early on that KD would be much more effective as a perimeter weapon.
He pulled me to the side one day and was just like, well, I'm gonna move you to the 2 and the 3. And me playing center for 3 or 4 years, I was kind of nervous. I couldn't dribble, I couldn't shoot.
Well, early on, I told Kevin about 10, you're not going to be a center, you're too skinny. So we're going to work on perimeter skills next year. I said, you can play center this year, but the next year I'm going to move you straight to the wing and give you 3 moves. And if you master these 3 moves, you'll be successful for the rest of your life.
Don't fall over from surprise, but Coach Brown was right. And those 3 moves are still critical facets of Durant's game even today. a pull-up jumper, a two-handed dribble jumper, and a baseline drive. That simple repertoire, at that size, quickly set KD up to be a dominant player. During that time, when KD played at places like Oak Hill Academy and later Montrose Christian, he and his sensei zeroed in on a more specific and ambitious offensive role model.
I try to pattern my game after T-Max. The one player I tried to be like on an everyday basis was Tracy McGrady. We was running tapes, watching T-Mac film, looking at stats, looking at how he go left, pull up. Like that was somebody I was drawn to and I had to study, so I had to write so much stuff down on him, and I was just starting to learn about him and see how he came from high school and how he was 6'8", long and athletic like me. So I just kind of shift my focus just to him. Man, model my game after him, you know, and try my best to play like him every night as a 10, 11-year-old. So.
Well, I wasn't 7 foot shooting like this guy.
Saying that you want to emulate an elite, badass wing scorer like Tracy McGrady is one thing, but succeeding to that extent and with those physical tools, that's already enough to make a terrifying offensive player. But Durant didn't stop there. A friend of mine once told me a story about being in a meeting with Steve Jobs. I know that sounds like a name drop, I'm sorry to do that, but he relayed something that Jobs in that moment said to his team. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to iterate as fast as you can. This apparently is an old adage for software development, but it also happens to be very true of player development. Durant's appetite for iteration has been essential, and if you look closely, this is the very thing that has defined his basketball life. For players trying to hit that tippy-top level of the all-time conversation, starting point as a basketball adult matters. By that I mean the windows between ages 17 and 19. By this point, Durant was not a secret. He was the #1 small forward and the #2 overall player in the class of 2006. People knew he was special, but as he transitioned into his legendary appointment television year at Texas, word was starting to get around that this wasn't even your typical highly ranked recruit.
The pickup was crazy, right? So he come in, he like, yeah, he kind of big, Yo, listen.
Y'all think he a 5?
He was serious, right?
Listen,
I'll tell you right now. PG County, baby. Yeah, he was serious, right? On my kids. I've never seen somebody dominate a pickup like he dominated this pickup. I'm talking about pros. College guys about to be pros. I'm talking, yo, listen. Everybody in the gym was like, all right, why is he coming here, yo? Like he has no business going to college like this. Yeah. Like, yo, he was an NBA All-Star. He's 11th grade, yo. I'm dead, like for real.
Current Oral Roberts assistant Russell Springman was on staff under Rick Barnes at the time, and he was early in recruiting Durant to Texas.
I definitely got feedback very quickly that, like, you can't guard the kid. You just can't guard him. And these are coming from NBA guys that were in the gym. And, I mean, at that time, I don't even know if Kevin had turned 19 years old. I think he was still 18. Shoot, he might have been 17.
Durant was famously taken #2 by the Seattle Sonics in the 2007 NBA draft behind Greg Oden. And just a couple lightning rants here. Okay, first of all, I will argue until my dying breath that Greg Oden was going to be a great player. He was not a bust. Go watch those early tapes in Portland when he was actually healthy. Second, and maybe it's the novelty of them being gone, but my God, I miss vintage Sonic stuff. I just miss their whole vibe. KD's PEs during that season are sick, and we've got to get these people their team back. And if that happened, how cool would it be if he finished his career in Seattle? Anyway, back to the video. Durant's offensive bag has some mainstays. We talked about the 3 basic moves from Coach Brown, but he really should get credit for his overall evolution. And no surprise here, but nearly all of that evolution has revolved around his jumper. You often hear people talk about spots when they talk about big-time scores. Spots just refers to comfort zones, places where a player has scored 1,000,000 times, and as a result, their muscle memory is highly developed. The problem with Durant is that keeping him off of his spots would mean keeping him off the court entirely. Keep him out of the gym, keep him out of the county. It's like trying to make Eric Andre uncomfortable. You're going to struggle to do it. For starters, because of his size and his high release point, Durantula can stand still and murder you as a spot-up scorer, which he did more this season in Brooklyn than any other time in his career. He shot 47.4% in 2020-21 on all catch-and-shoot looks and 46.6% over the past 5 seasons on just under 1,000 attempts. With some taller shooters, the answer can simply be, hey, run them off the three-point line, but this is where it gets dicey. Durant is firmly in the conversation for most devastatingly effective dribble shooter of all time. KD has always seemed to prefer to go left off of the bounce because he very frequently loads up on the left side of his body across his face, but over time he's gotten more comfortable on the right side too. The quickness and the fluidity of his dribble to shoot motion is phenomenal. Defensively, dropping against him is dropping dead. Going under is going 6 foot under. Hand down is man down. I could go all day with the puns, but you get it. Durant's highlight reel might as well be called 1,000 Ways to Die. Bringing it back to Tracy McGrady for a moment here, we have to talk about an important staple of his game. The hang dribble jumper, aka the Hezzy Jimbo, aka hanging with Uncle Jimmy. I made that last one up, but shooting out of the hang dribble has been a thing for a while. As the officiating around ball handling loosened in the 90s, we saw guys like Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf regularly cook defenders with it, and from there it became further popularized by Allen Iverson and even Kobe Bryant. T-Mac actually claims to have lifted it from the Mamba.
That hang dribble, that was just my thing, bro. Being 6'9", lower your ass to sleep and just rise up over you. I don't think you can do anything about that.
You know who uses that now to perfection?
KD.
Hanging dribbles like this create space between actions. Before this kind of stuff entered the highest levels of organized American basketball, a player could change speeds or direction, but the defender was in a much better position to react. When a ball handler briefly slows to a stop with their hand on the side of the ball, it's a momentary loss of information for the defender, so for that moment, they're guessing. Against lesser players, the guessing game can be less of a challenge, but against a lightning-quick 6'10" guy who can get that low and wide with his dribble with clean mechanics and a stratospheric release point, guessing more or less means you're screwed. The book on bothering Kevin Durant during his first couple NBA seasons featured some simple guidelines. He came into the league very long and very thin, therefore well-placed deterrents by strong and savvy defenders could funnel him into some disadvantaged situations.
Before he had a left-hand finish at the rim, I could always send him left, force him all the way to the basket. Even with the advantage of his size, he was still uncomfortable finishing with his left.
Don't fall over from shock, but Kobe was right. There are a lot of instances of KD attacking the left side of the basket with a shakier level of confidence. Watch Shane Battier push him all the way to the left side of the square here. That said, he didn't stagnate. Things got a lot better. By the 2009-10 season, Durant's third in the NBA, he was leading the league in scoring, and funneling him left or daring him to shoot over his right shoulder were no longer reliable ways to bother him. In top ISO situations where he drove left, over the course of those first 3 seasons, he leaped from a 22.2% finisher to 65.2%. Every evolution has left defenders with fewer and fewer options to battle Durant, and as a result, a shift occurred in the conversation about how to slow him down. This is a commonality among the greatest scorers ever to play. It becomes less about defending their attempts and more about disrupting the routines that occur before the attempts take place. This was very visible during KD's early playoff battles against Memphis when Tony Allen would be constantly entangled with Durant off the ball, preventing him from getting separation or any rhythm off the catch. Those types of playoff struggles against the Grizzlies and the Mavericks motivated Durant in 2011 to take his perimeter repertoire and supplement it with the trickiness of a post-up shooter like Dirk Nowitzki. Sometime in 2014, he took it a step further by working out with Adam Harrington, a former teammate of Dirk's and someone who'd been to Germany to study at the feet of the legendary Holger Gershwinder, who was Dirk's mentor. KD managed to add Dirk's one-legged fade on both sides of the basket. Just a simple bump, dribble, fade, and blam. If he senses that a longer arm player might be able to get their hands on his load up, he can spin over his opposite shoulder and blam. To top all of that off, Durant has a failsafe within any one-on-one situation that is nearly impossible to stop: his no dribble jump. Sometimes KD will unleash this early, maybe because he knows it'll be easy or because he's using as little energy as possible. But sometimes he'll hit a defender with this after they've done a great job battling him positionally. Check out this play from the 2016 playoffs. Danny Green does a great job of anticipating this pin down for KD that's intended for a catch and shoot at the right elbow, which is one of his favorite spots. Green meets him almost perfectly at the level of the catch without fouling him, but Durant doesn't panic at all. He takes a beat to regain his balance, briefly turns to face over right shoulder to lure Green's attention in that direction, and then spins, elevates, and fades over his left shoulder. At that point, when a guy is that big, that patient, that skilled, you're inclined to just throw your hands up.
Like, what can you do? He's shooting fadeaways off one leg.
When I was talking with Kevin a little bit, I said to him, Kevin, you're not going to be recognized for your all-around play because everyone talks about what a great scorer you are. This guy's always been a terrific all-around player. And I think people in this league, when people score points, they don't see the other little things that they do.
Don't fall over from shock, but Jerry West was right. One of the main areas where this is visible is on the defensive side of the ball. With some elite scorers, there's a trade-off between giving a lot and giving up a lot, but that hasn't been the case for KD for the past several years. Durant's never been a big risk taker or a disruptor, but he's a much better defender than he gets credit for. He's not someone that has to be hidden away from the ball. He's taken on some big assignments throughout his career, whether it be LeBron James, James Harden, on down the line. Durant more than holds his own. He's high-motored, he's huge, and it's difficult to put him on an island because A, his hands are quicker than you'd expect. Here's a play where he swipes Mike Conley like he's using a square reader to buy some tacos at a food truck. And B, his lower body flexibility sets him up to cover ground quickly. Watch this play against Houston from 2018. By all accounts, it seems like Eric Gordon has pulled the much bigger Durant far enough away from the rim to get a step on him, but KD mirrors him all the way to the basket and even disrupts this attempt without fouling. Using 538's defensive Raptor metric, you can see that from the 2013-14 season to 2020-21, Durant has consistently kept his head above water. Another way he's been able to do that is by being immensely switchable. Durant's switchability has given enough rim protection to allow Golden State and Brooklyn to put some nuclear offensive lineups on the floor. History is often cruel in its reductiveness, but to view KD as someone who
is only happy when he's shooting
is to overlook a great many things, and his development as a passer is one of them. Early in his career, like a lot of young scorers, Durant was prone to over-pursue his own offense. In his mind, because he had one hell of an offensive hammer, every situation looked like a nail. He had a tendency to spin into double teams, and he'd frequently take one too many dribbles or fail to anticipate when defenses were going to load up against him. Even when a player can score like Durant, they don't necessarily need to be an elite chess player thinking 2 or 3 moves ahead. They just need to develop a feel for where the first wave of help is going to come from so that their teammates can have the opportunity to play 4-on-3 or 3-on-2. KD's career assist-to-usage rate is a nice indicator of his improvement in this area. It shows that he's steadily improved nearly every season that he's been in the league, but that stretch from 2010 to 2014 was pretty remarkable. Better teammates certainly helped, and Sam Presti got to work flanking him with some great ones. Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and Serge Ibaka rounded out their young core, and slowly but surely KD started to recognize where and how help defenders would confront him so that diving teammates could get layups.
The constant help on my drives, the poking at the ball as I'm dribbling, the 2 guys rushing me as I'm beating somebody off the dribble. That's how I learned how to pass the ball and kind of be patient, a little bit more patient before the catch.
The truncated 2011-12 season was bizarre for the NBA at large, but it was a breakthrough year for Durant's maturity as a player. He began to steadily increase his reps as an initiator in the pick and roll, and with better teammates and polished weaknesses, he was gearing up to stake his claim as the best offensive player in the world.
It was early in the season. I think we played Minnesota, and I spent off somebody in the pick and roll and did a crazy layup I've never done in the game. And I was like, oh shit. I'm really in it right now. I feel like I'm in the prime of who I am.
That trend continued in 2013-14 when Kevin carried the biggest offensive load of his career and went on to win the MVP. It's possible that the absence of Russell Westbrook accelerated KD's acclimation to the playmaking life because he ramped up his pick and roll possession significantly during this time, and this led to some noticeable passing evolution. Now we were seeing him hit the short roller, often Serge Ibaka, consistently. From there, teams started to respect his ability to make this read, and that's when KD started sprinkling in skips if the defenses were too eager to take that pass away. All of these developments were great preparation for the playmaking opportunities that he'd have when he would join Golden State for the 2016-17, 2017-18, and 2018-19 seasons. 3 of the greatest offensive basketball teams ever assembled. Suddenly those skip passes were being caught by elite movement shooters, and those short roll passes were coming into the hands of skilled players who consistently made good decisions. We're talking about taking a championship level team and adding a 6'10 wing player who can punish you in off-screen actions, shoot it off the bounce in either direction, kill it over the shoulder out of the post, work as a clever and crafty finisher, shoulder pick and roll reps as a scorer or as a creator, and get to the line several times a game, where he's a career 88% free throw shooter. Adding Durant to that Warriors team was like adding Eddie Van Halen to Beat It. The song was already an all-time hit, but now it had a once-in-a-generation talent filling the space that remained. Year 13 is in the books for Kevin Durant, and although his first foray with Brooklyn was a choppy season that was ultimately disrupted by injuries to teammates, he's found a way to remain an unanswerable quandary on the offensive end of the floor. In 2020-21, he averaged 26.9 points per game, 5.6 assists, and 7.1 rebounds. He shot 45% from 3 on 5.4 attempts and hit a true shooting mark of 66.6, which is the highest efficiency of his career. He's also moved to 26th on the NBA's all-time scoring list, and his 61.5 true shooting percentage is the second highest mark in the top 50. It was also refreshing to see that when the lights were brightest and you just knew Brooklyn needed him to be great, he was still able to slather the moment in some of his signature sauce. To be this good at any point of a player's career is impressive on its own, but doing it at 32 years old after suffering an Achilles tear, that's unprecedented. The history of Achilles injuries in the NBA tells a daunting tale. So how in the hell is he moving like this? I decided I'd ask an actual doctor.
The Achilles tendon acts like a spring that stores and returns energy, allowing the athlete to propel themselves around the court. When that spring is broken and put back together, it often doesn't have the same mechanical properties that allow it to transfer that energy as effectively. Durant's performance this season was unprecedented after such an injury, but so was the amount of recovery time that he had. With an over 550-day absence, Durant had significantly more time than we typically see after an Achilles rupture. Research of NBA players shows that while it's safe to return sooner, it generally takes 2 to 3 years for players to reach a similar performance level to that of matched control players who didn't suffer this type of injury.
Awards and accolades aside, I expect Kevin Durant's long-term impact on the game to be gargantuan. He's been so groundbreaking and so successful that he's inspired an enormous wave of like-minded, long and lanky boys. But it's still difficult to imagine anyone doing what he's done with his exact cross-section of gifts.
No disrespect to James, but Kevin Durant is the best scorer ever.
I think Kevin is the best scorer that's played the game. I don't know if the game has seen a guy at his size that, really he's a 7-foot guard. I don't think the game's seen somebody like him. I really don't. And I think he can get a shot anytime he wants against anybody. Guys can play incredible defense, and he's got the ability to shoot over.
Beyond that, there's an interesting phenomenon happening in the public's perception of Kevin Durant, and it's driven by this odd, ongoing feeling that we're constantly failing to see him for how great he is.
I feel like I'm slighted all the time.
The guy was the Rookie of the Year. He's a 2-time NBA champion. He's got an MVP and 2 Finals MVP trophies. He's been All-NBA 9 times. He led the league in scoring 4 times in 5 years at one point, and he now has 3 gold medals. The problem is that adoration and acknowledgement aren't always necessarily the same thing. Anyone can see that Darth Vader is an epic badass, especially in that scene from the end of Rogue One. Very fun. But that doesn't mean that we're rooting for him. The thing is, KD had spent his entire career as Anakin, the aw shucks, down-to-earth, absurdly talented nice guy who obsessed over his craft and loved his mama. But the dark side heel turn moment happened when he jumped from Oklahoma City to join the team that he just lost to, the already incredible Golden State Warriors. Fair or unfair, it's the talking point that will peskily linger when we look back at KD's impressive career. It was clear that KD felt that OKC's willful personnel constraints had stifled his personal growth as a player. In order to iterate again, he had to do something drastic.
And with OKC, I played with a lot of athletes. I didn't play with a lot of skill guys, not like shooters, ball handlers. So after a while, my game started to grow. I was like, I need a change. I wanted to see how it felt to beat one guy. I was seeing a lot of other stars playing one-on-one. I wanted to see how that felt. I haven't had that feeling in a long time. I was playing with a lot of double teams, a lot of loading up. Because when you're playing with traditional bigs as well, it takes up a little bit of the space. Then also, we had a lot of athletes, a lot of guys that's not known as shooters. They hit shots, but you wouldn't mind them shooting threes. So it was like I was always a man and a half with guarding me. So I just wanted to see how it felt.
So it wasn't about the championships as ESPN and everybody would have you believe. He wanted to play where he could continue to grow as a player because he wasn't developing as much as I wanted him to do in OKC. I didn't see the development that I foresaw in bringing him up.
Still, people didn't want to hear it. It took vulnerability.
If KD left, I would cry. I would cry.
And turned it into vengefulness and heartbreak.
Are you still mad at Kevin Durant?
Yes.
How come?
Because he's a traitor.
I think everybody just feels betrayal.
I really did think, especially in the immediate aftermath, like, well he's not going to go there. Like, that would be crazy if he went there. It'd just be this. Why would he go there? That makes... You can't go there.
I could have handled it to any other team but the Warriors. It's just, that's still too raw. It's still too fresh.
Space Jam 2 got better reviews than KD's decision to join Golden State.
How are you viewing this move from Durant?
Well, I'm viewing it as the weakest move I've ever seen from a superstar.
He's taken himself out of the conversation of the greatest.
Kevin Durant not tough enough for this game. He has to go find an easy path to get his titles, so he goes and joins the best team in regular season history. I got no respect for this.
And our gymnastics team was so dominant that Kevin Durant told me he wants to play for them next year.
Instead of going back to the lab and internalizing that failure so that he could emerge cathartically like a redemptive butterfly, the way that Isaiah Thomas did in 1989, the way that MJ did in 1991, the way that Dirk did in 2011, or Giannis in 2021, instead of continuing on that hero's journey to conquer his foe, he joined his foe. We've been conditioned to see basketball this way, so it grates against the sacred texts of superstardom. If a player cares about greatness, they dance with the one who brought them, even if the one who brought them insists on getting drunk, dominating the aux chord, and dancing in a way that's less fun for everyone else at the party. But the playing field for franchises is decidedly not level. So if your team manages to acquire other all-stars to help you, great, you're going to be in position to win. But if you jump ship to join some all-stars of your own volition, shame on you. Joining talent is typically celebrated in most walks of life. When great actors team up with great directors, we giddily flip our shit. When amazing musicians collaborate, we blissfully lose our minds. But when great players scheme to play with other great players, most people roll their eyes and grind their teeth. Because he decided to do things his way for maybe the first time in his life, Kevin Durant found himself a villain.
These guys were universally beloved. Universally beloved until they did something for themselves. And KD has talked about this in the past before, where he's like, so much of my career in Oklahoma City was about pleasing other people.
Kevin was a guy who wants to never disappoint anybody. He was a guy who wants everything to be happy, but we know that's not the real world or life when you're growing up as a young man.
In life, when you make decisions based on everyone else, I think it's the wrong decision.
I think that it's important to see the entire map when we decide how special players are in the historical sense, while keeping in mind that excellence is contextualized by a player's performance relative to their era. Every subsequent generation has the benefit of oceans of refined research and teaching. To me, this is the significance of Kevin Durant's career. Relative to his peers and everything that's come before him, he is arguably the encapsulation of the scoring lexicon of the past 90 years of basketball.
He is the basketball player that he is, regardless of all of this like story stuff, right? Like, he is the talent that he is outside of all of the drama. And that is extraordinary.
Can he be prickly? I mean, yeah. Combative and a little reactionary? Sure. But more and more, I find myself trying to look past the tangled rules of historical discussion and just enjoy phenomenal talents while I have the chance. Because, folks, they don't make them like Kevin Durant. And it'll be one hell of a player if they ever do. Let me know if you agree.